Good evening. We're excited to share some updates with you tonight on the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal Replacement Project. My name is Hadley Rodero. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning, Customer, and Government Relations for Washington State Ferries, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. Thank you so much for being here. Tonight, we're going to hear from our project team about the alternatives that we're considering for replacing the Fauntleroy Terminal. And I want to start by thanking the many members of our community advisory group, our technical advisory group, and the executive advisory group who've been working with us over the last couple of years and guided the work that you're going to see tonight. We truly couldn't be working on this project without input from members of each of our Triangle ferry route communities, our agency partners, local jurisdictions, and tribes. And we're really looking forward to hearing from you more during tonight's meeting and all the comments that community members have submitted to us over the months that we've been working on this project. Before we get started, let's talk about how you'll be able to participate tonight. All members of the audience are in listen-only mode, and the question and answer box is available for you to submit questions at any time during the presentation, or you can wait and hold your questions and submit them when we get to the question and answer period at the end of the meeting. We're going to take all questions in the Q&A box. If you're calling in by phone and cannot access the Q&A feature, you can raise your hand, and that will allow me to know that you're by phone, and you can dial *9 to raise your hand, and then we'll allow you to unmute and ask your question out loud. We're going to do our best to answer all questions tonight, but we may need to combine them or respond by email after the fact if it's a question that we're not able to answer during tonight's meeting. And if you're having technical difficulties, you can also use the Q&A box to let us know that you need support, and a member of the team will get back to you. To enable closed captioning, click the CC button on the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen, if you find that helpful to have closed captions on. So now let's talk about what the meeting agenda is. We're going to be having a brief presentation followed by most of the meeting will be dedicated to taking your questions. We're going to start off with an overview of the project, why we're doing this project, run through all the terminal alternatives we're considering, talk about a concept for the intersection at the entrance to the ferry terminal, and then talk about some of the environmental context of the project and how we're screening the alternatives as we move closer to selecting an alternative or alternatives to move into environmental review. So before we dive in, let's talk a little bit. I just want to find out who's in the room with us tonight. And I'm going to pop up a few polls for you to answer on your screen. So I'm going to go ahead and launch polls. You'll see those two questions on your screen. The first one is, where are you joining us from? Vashon Island, Fauntleroy, or the West Seattle neighborhood, South Kitsap County, Southworth, Port Orchard, etc., or somewhere else? And then, why are you most interested in the Fauntleroy terminal replacement project? Is it because you're a ferry rider, you live in the neighborhood, you live in one of the other Triangle route communities, you like to stay informed of WSF projects, or that you just simply want to learn more about this project, or you're interested in transportation issues? So I'll give everyone a few minutes to respond to those polls, and then I'll share the results. Looks like we have pretty good participation. If you haven't already had a chance to select your answer to the two polls on your screen. Okay, looks like almost everyone's participated. So I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results. So joining us tonight, we have a pretty good mix from all three of the Fauntleroy, Vashon, Southworth route communities. 38% from Vashon, 38% from West Seattle or Fauntleroy, smaller number, 13% from South Kitsap County, but that's great, and then 13% from other areas. And then on your screen, you can also see why are we most why are you most interested in the project? And we have 59% say that they ride the route regularly. 24% say they live near the Fauntleroy terminal. 29% they live in one of the Fauntleroy route communities, the greater communities. 41% say they use the ferry system and want to stay informed of WSF's projects, and 29% just want to learn more about the project. So that's great. Thank you for sharing those answers with us. Okay, so before we get started, I just wanted to share what this tonight's all about, is getting your input and sharing project information with the community. And this is something we've been doing since 2021 when we first launched this project. We've been engaging with the Triangle Route communities through 3 advisory groups that were selected, our community advisory group, through an application process. We have about 25 community advisory group members who've been meeting with us regularly. We've received over 1,000 comments from the community. We've hosted community meetings over the years, and we've held 23 advisory group meetings and 1 online open house. And all of this engagement and these comments have helped refine the range of alternatives that you'll see tonight, and also some of the topics that we're continuing to work on and to look into in terms of how this project will shape the future of the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal. And then before we dive into the presentation, I also invite you to visit our online open house, which we will put into the meeting chat in a few minutes. That open house is open through May 24th. It's a great opportunity to see most of the information we're going to share tonight in greater detail. You'll be able to find the graphics we're going to share tonight. You can look at them up closely or look at them after the meeting. And there's also a comment form on that online open house if you want to take a little more time to consider your comments and share them after tonight's meeting. So Laura's going to put that link in the chat. I see she just did. So feel free to visit that open house while we're sharing the meeting tonight or afterward. Now, David Sowers is going to join us and kick off the meeting and tell us what the project's all about. Hi, Dave.
Thank you, Hadley. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. It's really great that you can take some time out of your day to be here. My name is David Sowers. I'm the Washington State Ferry's Terminal Engineering and Construction Director. I'm going to review some brief background materials on the Fauntleroy Terminal and why Washington State Ferries is prioritizing this project. As some of you are aware, WSF is modernizing its fleet with new vessels, adding electrifications to our operations, and over the last 10 years has made significant strides replacing outdated terminals at both Mukilteo and at Coleman Dock in downtown Seattle. So that sets the stage for Fauntleroy Terminal, which is next up. The Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal in West Seattle serves almost 3 million riders per year, supporting service between Fauntleroy, Southworth, and Vashon Island. The terminal was built in the 1950s and needs significant work to preserve the terminal and maintain safe and reliable ferry service. The terminal faces several challenges, and those include the aging, seismically vulnerable parts of the terminal that are overdue for replacement. The terminal structure is at risk of damage from rising sea levels and increasing debris that hit the dock during high tides. And it has a number of operational challenges, including limited dock capacity, an inefficient intersection at Fauntleroy Way, and creates backups onto that street. The purpose of this project is to improve operations on the Triangle Ferry route and preserve and upgrade the ferry terminal facilities so they're consistent with WSF's 2040 long-range plan. These terminal alternatives that WSF is considering will address, among those above, the core issues of safe, reliable, and efficient service for our customers. And I'll just segue a second here to the picture that on the slide, which shows a very heavily covered beach of driftwood. It shows some channel section, steel channel section that's been retrofitted onto the old timber piling to connect better the decking and the joists to the old timber piles that are driven just barely into that beach. So a more modern and structurally robust dock will be the principal reason for doing this project. Most of you see the dock from up at the street level, if you will, but if you walk down underneath the dock, you can see that it's not in very good condition. So with that, let's go to the next slide. So what we're using to start this sort of planning and initial environmental process is a process called the Planning and Environmental Linkages Process, or PEL for short. And you'll see that term used throughout this presentation. This early planning phase helps Washington State Ferries identify transportation issues, environmental concerns, community values, and economic goals early in the project planning. We are currently in the level 3 screening process, where we are considering things like traffic conditions, cost estimating, permitting requirements, and ways to make the terminal work safer and more efficiently for everybody. We are also studying Good to Go, which is a system that we use in the metropolitan area to toll State Route 99, 405, and SR 520, for example. So during this phase, the project team, using input from the community and our advisory groups that Hadley mentioned earlier, will refine this range of concepts, which we call alternatives. And later in 2024, hopefully by the end of this year, WSF will recommend an alternative that will go into the formal environmental review process, which is called NEPA. All right, so I'd like to share a little bit more about where we are in the process. The graphic summarizes the process that we're using to narrow down the range of alternatives. We've eliminated options outside of the Fauntleroy area when we did our level 1 screening. And at the end of level 2, we decided on 2 main options. And now we are further refining those alternatives before we recommend an alternative that will move forward next year. I do want to clarify some terminology on on a same footprint alternative that was studied during the PEL process. This alternative was a dock that would be exactly the same size as the footprint for the existing terminal. Not to be confused with terminology like same size dock, which represents a dock that is a similar holding capacity as the current dock. This same footprint alternative did not meet several elements of the project's purpose and need. It did not provide efficient and safe loading and fare processing for pedestrians, vehicles, and bikes. The dock would also be too crowded for crews to effectively sort and stage trucks, ADA folks, and emergency and other priority vehicles. It did not provide operational efficiencies that support reliable service, while again meeting the service levels that we project for this route in the 2440 long-range plan. And of course, the difficulty we have in sorting traffic, as many of you know, for 2 destinations. It also, this same footprint size did not improve multimodal connections or enhance customer experience or accommodate ridership growth consistent with the long-range plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Thomas, who's going to walk us through the alternatives a little bit more.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. My name is Ed Thomas, and I'm the engineering lead for the project. And before we share the alternatives, we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable with all of the technical terms we're using. The diagram on the screen, this key terminal features slide, shows the key elements of a ferry terminal. Ferry terminals have several unique operational and safety features. The dolphins and wing walls are the in-water berthing structures that help vessels land safely at the terminal. The trestle, also referred to as the dock, and the transfer span support loading and unloading vehicle traffic. WSF developed concepts that replace the terminal at a similar size as the existing terminal and concepts that expand the terminal to provide more on-dock vehicle holding capacity. Common features of the new terminal. So there are several key features consistent across all alternatives. Replace the dock at the same location, accommodate 186 vehicles between dock and Fauntleroy Way holding, meet seismic design standards and accommodate rising sea level, space for large trucks to safely navigate, wider lanes and space for people walking, rolling, biking, and driving motorcycles, more space for operations, a new terminal building, dedicated drop-off and pickup area for passengers with disabilities, a larger toll plaza with two toll booths, and minimal dock widening near the shoreline. In addition to these features, we are also studying good to go, advanced ticketing, and other features like overhead passenger loading, and working with our partners at Seattle Department of Transportation to consider changes to the intersection. This alternative slide shows the collection of all the alternatives. There are slight variations in each alternative, and we're going to run through the slides of these options quickly a couple of times to show the differences. Then I'll talk in more detail about each alternative. As we go through these, please take note of the shaded blue areas on either side of the dock. This is eelgrass habitat, which Marcia will speak to in greater detail a bit later. We designed the terminal options to avoid impacting this environmentally sensitive area. Now I'm going to cover each alternative at a high level, but as a reminder, this information is available in detail at our online open house. So alternative A, the first option, replaces the dock at the same size as the current dock and maintains the existing wing walls and dolphins, the in-water structures that help guide the ferry into place and protect the dock. This concept is slightly wider than the current dock to provide space for a large vehicle to navigate and provide space for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. The dock capacity is 76 vehicles, fewer cars than the current dock. The dock width is 85 feet. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 850 feet, and it has 4 holding lanes. Alternative A1 is similar to alternative A, but includes new dolphins and new wing walls. This option is slightly longer and holds the same amount of vehicles as the current dock. Dock capacity is 84 vehicles. The dock width is 85 feet. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 905 feet, and it has 4 holding lanes. So alternatives A2 and A3 are variations of alternative A1 that have the same layout as alternative A1 and include good to go and advanced ticketing as A2, or only advanced ticketing technology as A3. Alternative B is similar to alternative A1, but is longer, moving the transfer span, wing walls, and dolphins to deeper water. Moving these elements to deeper water may allow eelgrass and macroalgae to regrow in and around the scour hole. This dock capacity is 124 vehicles, or 1 full Issaquah class ferry. Dock width is 85 feet. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 1,105 feet, and it has 4 holding lanes. The next alternative, alternative B1, is the same length as alternative B and includes 1 extra holding lane on the north over deeper water to minimize impacts to Cove Park and environmentally sensitive areas closer to shore. The dock capacity is 155 vehicles. The dock width is 94 feet. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 1,105 feet, and it has 5 holding lanes. Alternative B2 is similar in length to alternative B1 and adds 2 shorter holding lanes to the south, further out over the water. This tapered dock design is narrower near the shoreline. This dock capacity is 155 vehicles. The dock width is 76.5 feet near shore and 103 feet over deeper water. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 1,115 feet, and it has 4 full-length holding lanes and 2 half lanes. Alternative B3 is the same configuration as alternative B2, is slightly shorter than alternative B2, and includes 1 less holding lane. The rest of the design features are the same as alternative B2. This dock capacity is 124 vehicles. The dock width is 66.5 feet near shore and 93 feet over deeper water. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 1,090 feet. It has 3 full-length holding lanes and 2 half lanes. And the last alternative, alternative C, is the same configuration as alternative B2 and adds a full-length holding lane on the north side of the dock. This dock option can hold 186 vehicles, removing the queue on Fauntleroy Way Southwest on most typical days. The dock width is 85.5 feet near shore, 112 feet wide over deeper water. The length of the pedestrian walkway is 1,105 feet. It has 5 full-length holding lanes and 2 half lanes. And now I'd like to hand it over to Charlie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie Torres. I'm the design project manager for this terminal replacement project. We have developed design renderings to help you better visualize the differences between each one. But please keep in mind that these show conceptual finishes that's based on the Washington State Ferry's new Mukilteo terminal. The intent is to show the dock footprint and general layout of each alternative. We will seek community input on the look and feel of the terminal a little later in the design process. The first image of the current dock is taken from the King County Pump Station. These renderings help show what each dock option looks like near Cove Park. This is a current view from Cove Park, and these next few slides show how each alternative looks from the beach. Okay, the next view shows the existing walking path and what the pedestrian pathway and dedicated bicycle lane look like. The walkway is 7 feet wide, the same as the current dock. Finally, this is the view. Oh, still showing those. Okay. Finally, this is the view of the dock from Captain's Park and each alternative from Captain's Park. To address one of the key needs for this project, improving terminal efficiency and faster ferry loading and unloading, Washington State Ferries will improve the intersection of Fauntleroy Way Southwest and the terminal at Barton Street Southwest. Washington State Ferries is working closely with agency partners, specifically Seattle Department of Transportation and King County Metro, to plan an improved intersection configuration that includes a traffic signal. These improvements are needed for any alternative selected and will be needed during construction of the new terminal. Washington State Ferries will begin intersection improvements ahead of the larger terminal replacement project. We will share more information as plans progress. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Marcia Tolan, to talk to you about permitting environmental issues.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. I'm Marcia Tolan with the Washington State Ferries. I'm the permitting and environmental lead. The image now is one that shows key environmental features and resources near the terminal that we've considered and as we develop the alternatives and will consider when we screen the alternatives. There are some key environmental features or elements that I'd like to point out. First, there's the intertidal and nearshore habitats near the dock that provide valuable habitat for salmon and other marine life. There are eelgrass beds north and south of the trestle, and there's a high concentration of kelp to the west of the ferry slip. There's no eelgrass or macroalgae in the area around the end of the dock where propeller wash from vessels creates a scour hole. There's Fauntleroy Creek, which flows under the Fauntleroy Way southwest and then under the dock and then into Puget Sound. Fauntleroy Creek provides spawning habitat for coho salmon and for coastal cutthroat trout. The dock is supported by 430 creosote treated timber piles. And with this project, the dock also includes more than 1,000 tons of toxic creosote treated timber, a known water pollutant. The density of the piles also influences the flow of Puget Sound tidal waters and Fauntleroy Creek near the trestle. This causes debris and driftwood to collect under the trestle, and then that debris collects on the shore. It makes it difficult for fish to pass to and from Fauntleroy Creek. Then there are two parks near the trestle. One is Cove Park, which offers public waterfront access and a narrow sandy beach next to the dock. And then Captain's Park, which provides a public green space with bench seating across Fauntleroy Way southwest from the terminal entrance. As we move closer to recommending an alternative to take into the environmental review process, we first take it through level 3 screening. And that process is similar to what we did for level 2 screening. We developed these criteria based on our purpose and need statement, which was extensively reviewed by our advisory groups. And that review was in partnership with our advisory groups. We refined the screening criteria we used in level 1 and 2 to develop our level 3 screening criteria. The screening process is much more detailed for level 3 and uses more specific metrics. The list includes the general categories we used for level 3 screening that we're going to use. To view the full list of screening criteria, please visit our online open house. The screening criteria categories include meet requirements for structural reliability, accommodate projected sea level rise, which is resilience, improve operational efficiency, which is to minimize dwell time, and to process vehicles more efficiently, and to maintain on-time performance. Reduce the number of conflict points between traffic modes. That's safety of vehicles, bicyclists, and of pedestrians. Meet operational requirements. 186 vehicles on the dock or in upland holding, access and maneuverability for an Issaquah class vessel, and connection to a minor arterial. The next is keep current sailing schedule, which is the number of peak departures and crossing times, and then policy risk. The next is to enhance multimodal connections, that is to connect to transit or allow for growth in walk-ons, people biking, and for van pools. The next is avoiding changes to parks and recreational areas. Under the National Environmental Policy Act, this is known as Section 4F and 6F. Under the state laws, it's a matter of projects funded by the Recreation and Conservation Office. The next is to require changes to traffic circulation on local streets in the ferry terminal area. And then project costs, which is for design, planning, for right-of-way, for risk and construction. And then alignment with the project's current schedule. The next is project feasibility, which is an amount of additional right-of-way needed beyond the existing terminal footprint that is for an expanded footprint, for utilities or construction. And then finally, permitting and coordination. This is the level of coordination with external partners, permitting complexity, and tribal coordination. So I'll now hand this over to Hadley.
Okay, well, thank you, Marcia. So that is our presentation part of the evening. And I noticed we had some attendees who joined a little bit late. So I'm going to recap how you can share your comments tonight. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can type your questions or your comments there. And we have a panel of project team members here to answer your questions. On the screen are graphics that are showing the 7 different alternatives that we discussed earlier in the meeting. So we're happy to describe those in more detail if that would be helpful, or to explain them more fully. And in addition to the presenters that you all met during the presentation, we also have Mark Bandy, who's a member of our consultant team, managing the traffic analysis and some of the work on traffic, and then Trevor Sharp from Washington State Ferry's operations department here. And they can also answer your questions in addition to Dave and Marcia and Ed and Charlie. So I'm going to just dive right in. If you have questions and comments, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll just continue as long as we have time and as long as we have questions to address to our panel. So the first question is, what does the term upland holding refer to? Marcia mentioned upland holding, and Ed, I think you mentioned that too. Do you want to answer that, Ed?
Yes. The upland holding refers to the vehicles that are queued along Fauntleroy Way Southwest outside of the toll plaza.
Yeah, so an important feature of all of these alternatives is that they all have a capacity, the same capacity, 186 vehicles. And the difference between them is some vehicles are held on the dock and some are held as they are today along the upland holding, the shoulder along Fauntleroy Way. So that's just a feature that I think several of our presenters talked about. The next question is, will this presentation be posted somewhere for future use? That's a really great question. I should have addressed that at the beginning. We are recording this meeting. We'll be posting a YouTube video of the entire meeting, which will include the presentation on the project website. So you can go back and reference that. And then also all of these graphics in a very similar format as the presentation are available on our online open house, and actually more detail than we have on the slides tonight. The next question for the panel, Marcia, can you please explain the changes to the terminal area?
I think the image that we had earlier, which showed some of a broader view of the environs, gives you an idea of with different alternatives, how it affects the adjacent properties. For example, the 2 parks, Cove Park and Captain's Park. That Cove Park, depending upon the size of the alternatives, it will affect somewhat the view, but not much. You'll still be able to access the park and the shoreline in a similar way. With the new length of the trestle, it will extend farther out of the intertidal and nearshore zone, which will allow more eelgrass to grow and will allow that scour hole to heal that is currently around the end of the existing dock. And that too would provide more marine habitat for marine life that's in that nearshore zone. I think those are some of the 2 items that will be of most change, as well as the elevated trestle will allow for more room for drifting material to flow through, more light to the habitat below. So there would be less blocking of debris and risk to changing the channel location for Fauntleroy Creek. all of those things will have a greater impact upon the marine habitat and the fish that live there, and the marine vegetation, and for those who enjoy the shoreline.
Thanks, Marcia. And Ed, as a follow-up, this question is saying, are there changes to the toll booths and how the toll booths are configured today that would be part of any of these alternatives?
Yeah, there are slight changes to the toll plaza area. The toll lanes themselves will actually be a little bit wider than what they currently are today to be compliant with the current standards. The toll booths will be a little bit wider because they're going to be designed to meet current WSF standards with respect to space needs for the toll booths.
Okay, thanks, Dave. The next question is the dock being designed to meet today's current needs or projected needs 10 years from now or 30 years from now? And the comment is, it seems a shame to build a dock that just meets today's needs and not planning for the future.
Yeah, good question. I mean, obviously, certainly there's been a lot of growth on the route on Vashon Island, on the peninsula. We use projections by the Puget Sound Regional Council to develop our 2040 long-range plan, and beyond that, you know, how much growth do we anticipate? So we certainly are mindful of that. Just like buying a car, if you're single, you buy a certain size car. If you have 3 kids and a dog, you buy a different size car. So we are looking to the future. We're thinking about that in the decision we make about the size of the dock.
Okay, and next question for you too. Has the team considered where the ferry will load during construction yet?
Yeah, that's going to be a real tricky challenge for us. We have started some preliminary discussions and contemplated like how everything would work during construction. Obviously, we can't just shut the route down, close off service for several years and tear everything down and rebuild it. We need to continue to maintain service. We will have to figure out how to do that. One option that we're looking at is to add a temporary slip that allows us to kind of load off to the side so we can extend or widen the dock if that alternative is selected. But regardless of how we do it, regardless of the alternative selected here, that is going to be a big challenge for our contractor and for us to continue to maintain service.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Mark, there's a couple comments or questions here about parking along Fauntleroy Way, and currently there's some parking hour restrictions. Will there be parking restrictions on Fauntleroy Way? Should the dock increase capacity? Will there continue to be parking restrictions? And then another comment says, will the parking in the ferry holding lane be forbidden at all times if we continue to use it for ferry holding? Is that something that the team's considered or that you have an answer to yet?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Hadley. Mark Bandy is Hadley mentioned helping support the project. I think part of that's to be determined. One of the things we'll be doing is we've been working on developing transportation analysis models for each of the alternatives that you all see on the screen here that have those different dock sizes as well as the good-to-go processing differences. One of the pieces of information we're going to be generating is how that might then change how much queuing happens up on Fauntleroy Way itself with that. And based on that, then subsequently there would be a discussion between Washington State Ferries and the city of Seattle, who is, you know, the owner and operator of Fauntleroy Way itself, as well as with the community, about what adjustments there may or may not be to the length of parking restrictions, the time and the duration of that. So that's a bit of a long answer, say it's to be determined, but we are going to generate some information that's going to help us all factor that in as we do the screening of these alternatives.
Okay, and Mark, you just mentioned the traffic analysis that's happening now. Is the 3-boat sailing schedule being utilized in developing assumptions for the number of sailings and that traffic analysis?
Yes, the answer is yes. We are doing this based on the 3-boat schedule that was developed and started operations back in 2019, just prior to the pandemic. So yeah, that's our set of assumptions going forward, which pick on or add on to that horizon year or long range look question that was earlier, which is that's this long range assumption is that it's still a 3-boat service at the Issaquah class ferry size. And so that's our transportation modeling assumptions.
Okay, thanks. And second part of the same commenter's question, David, do any of the designs allow for a second slip or any plans to add a second slip?
Well, the project, as it's planned at the moment, does not include any plans to add a second slip. We've heard this question in the past. Certainly we'll have to provide a temporary slip during construction, but there's no funding, and it's not in the project description as set by the legislature to add a second slip or add overhead loading. But certainly we don't want to preclude those in any kind of design, as that may be something that future generations would want to take on.
Okay, thanks. Ed, in early phases of the project, did you consider creating off-site park and ride lots with shuttle service to the ferry to minimize cars on the ferries or increase ridership? Was that one of the alternatives you considered?
I don't recall that being an alternative that was considered early on in the conceptual development. We did have alternatives that looked at various other modes of entry and remote holding that were dismissed in level 2, and nothing with respect to shuttles.
Okay, thanks.
Hadley, could I interject and add on to that real quick?
Sure.
Specifically not shuttle service, but it is important and it's been a criteria and a planning assumption to, you'll note the transit service does run regularly along Fauntleroy Way, the Rapid Ride Sea Line, and some other service. So considering improvements in connectivity between that regularly scheduled transit service and the terminal has been a consideration. So a specific shuttle, as Ed said, was not considered.
Okay, thank you. Dave, this next one's an interesting question. Why have toll booths at all? And has WSF considered using the same technology as in use with our bridges, which I think means the good to go system that WashDOT uses on other facilities?
Yeah, I'll start to answer this one. Maybe Mark can chime in too a little bit on the good to go. I know this is something that's been interesting to folks as a solution to help us manage the dock. We do not have an automated system at any of our ferry terminals currently that provides for fare collection, that allows us to count the number of occupants inside the vehicle, can process disabled fares or senior fares or any of those types of things. So we use the old-fashioned system of staffing somebody in the toll booths at all of our terminals, with the exception of where we're not collecting fares, for example, from Vashon over to Fauntleroy. So we don't have any plans to change that approach, but the idea of good to go, which is an automated system that reads that picks up a signal off of a reader on the windshield of your car. If you use Highway 99 or 520, it collects the toll electronically. That has been something that we have started to study, and we hope to share that with our community advisory groups in the coming months. We're getting real close to sharing that information, and I think that some folks think that may have a real application here, and maybe in a pilot project we learned that it has application throughout our system. Anything that I should add there, Mark?
No, I don't think so, Dave. I think you hit it pretty well.
All right, Hadley.
Thanks. Marcia, do these options provide for capturing runoff from the dock and making sure that this runoff does not go into Fauntleroy Cove? How would that be something that would be part of this new terminal?
Well, it's for Fauntleroy, as with any new build of a terminal in our ferry system, it allows for the opportunity to upgrade and enhance our drainage system, and our runoff would get collected. So this allows for us to make those changes to the current existing conditions and to treat stormwater that gets collected on the dock before it gets dispersed.
Thanks, Marcia. Mark, you mentioned this, but it's worth repeating because we have another question. Is the project assuming larger vessels, larger ferries for this route, or taking into account new bigger boats, or will we still use the 124 car Issaquah class ferries?
Sure, I'll speak to that again. So the 2040 long range plan per that is the triangle route is to continue to be served by the Issaquah class ferry, which is 124 vehicle capacity. So that has been and continues to be the planning assumption for the vessel size that will serve this route.
Okay, thanks. So just as a reminder, we're taking questions, comments, if you want to share them about the replacement of the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal. We're nearing the end of the questions that have been submitted so far. So if you do have a question or comment, please drop it in the Q&A box now, and our panel will answer it before we wrap up our meeting. So the next one is not really directly project related, but I'll take a minute to answer it. The question is, should Vashon get more sailings than Southworth since the peninsula has a bridge? And just as a reminder, the Fauntleroy Vashon Southworth ferry route is part of the state highway system, SR 160. So we do try to equally balance our service to Vashon Island and Southworth to serve them as part of the state highway system. The next one is a comment here. So if any of you have a response, feel free to jump in. To encourage carpooling, why not consider just a vehicle fee and drop considerations of the number of people in the vehicle? Develop a new approach totally, please. So Mark, is that going to be something that's sort of touched on in any of the traffic studies or the good to go studies?
Sure, I'll respond to that. This would be more that somebody will be in that good to go and advanced ticketing set of options being considered. There are a number of variations about how one thinks about the application of a digital ticketing or good to go system. This idea will be qualitatively spoken to. One of the immediate considerations that does come with that is obviously the revenue from fare implications, and so just also as a reminder that you all know this on the State Ferry side is that the Transportation Commission is the toll setting or fare setting agency. So this is not something this takes considerations wide variety of implications for customers and fares, et cetera, as well as what difference that makes from processing speed. So that'll all be spoken to as we continue the good to go work.
Great, thanks, Mark. David, how does cost figure into the final selection process?
Well, I think cost always factors into decisions we make. We're a state agency, we're stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, and we want a solution that works best for some of the things that we've described here, but also has to fit within our budget. That's very important to us. And as you can imagine, the larger the dock gets, and the deeper the water the dock is, the cost goes up. So that's definitely something that we're paying very close attention to. We do have money set aside by the state legislature, but if we need additional funds, we've obviously seen a lot of cost escalation over the last few years. We would have to go through that process and submit budgets to the House and Senate for their review and their approval.
Okay, thanks, Dave. We talked earlier about how intersection improvements, specifically a signal at the entrance to the terminal, are part of this project. And the question, David and Charlie, I know you've been working with SDOT a lot. So has SDOT signaled that they're in agreement with that? Or can you talk a little bit about your coordination with SDOT on the intersection?
Well, I'll let Charlie answer that one since he's been more in the loop with them.
Charlie, have you been coordinating? You're on mute, I think, still.
Yeah. Yes, we've just initiated some meetings with SDOT. We're partners here at that intersection, and we're coming up with ideas of how we could have it signaled. One of the things they stress, which we've been hearing in the last few years, is focus more on movements other than vehicular movements. That's something they want us to have in the design. Don't just have it to help out the vehicles getting on and off the ferry, but the pedestrians and both sides are very keen on wanting this to be a safer intersection for all. So the details haven't been ironed out, but that's the general direction we're going.
Thanks, Charlie. We should clarify SDOT stands for Seattle Department of Transportation. So the city of Seattle's transportation department that operates the Fauntleroy Way. Next question, Trevor, I'm going to let you tackle this one it's an ops question. If there's a longer dock, have you considered how weather and current have been assessed and how the ferries will handle this? Have we been talking to captains and those that operate in and out of the dock about these designs?
Yes, we've been talking to the captains and the port captains and some of the deck crew and stuff like that, and they have been more than happy to help us figure out distance. And sooner or later, we're going to have a map that shows the distance between the shipping channel and the dock. They're working on that now. So
great, but they've said that they're pretty comfortable that none of these designs would really change their approach
nope,
into the
not at all.
terminal.
Not at all.
Okay, and Charlie, back to the traffic light. Would that be installed prior to 2027? What is your current timeline for the signalized intersection?
Yeah, our goal is to start designing at the second half of this calendar year and perhaps advertise a project next spring. And we would do the work in the fall of 2025, and it would probably spill into the beginning of 2026. That's a tentative schedule. We haven't even started the design yet.
Okay, well, that is the end of our Q&A so far. If you do have a question, please put it into the Q&A box right now. I do see a comment here related to the Southworth dock, which I will respond directly to you, but if not, we can move on with tonight's meeting. Thank you for all the great questions and comments in the chat and really good information from our panel members. As we mentioned earlier in the meeting, our online open house is live until May 24th. The link is on the screen. It's also in the meeting chat. It's engage.wsdot.wa.gov/Fauntleroy-ferry-terminal. So that's where you can find all the same information that we presented tonight, and actually more detail. You can look at these renderings and graphics up close, share them with your community members. There's a comment form on that online open house. So I really encourage you, if you're interested, to go check that out. We also meet regularly with our 3 advisory groups, and we post those meetings on the project website, which I'll also ask Sophie to put in the chat for you all. And you're welcome to attend those advisory group meetings. They're all open to the public. You could be in the audience listening to those discussions, and we post recordings of the advisory group meetings on the project website. So if you want to follow along in more detail, hear some of this technical analysis firsthand, you're welcome to attend our advisory group meetings. And when we schedule the next round, they'll be posted on the project website. Our next steps are to finish the level 3 screening using the screening criteria that Marcia shared earlier in the meeting, selecting what are these alternatives to advance into further environmental review and then design and into construction. And we'll be hoping to wrap the process up later this year. So look for opportunities to comment as we complete the Pell study. We'll be having additional opportunities for public comment when we get to that final alternative and make that selection. We'll be hoping to get further input on that decision. So thank you all for joining us today. Please stay in touch with us, either through the online open house for the next couple of weeks, or at any time you can send questions to the project email, Fauntleroy term proj, PROJ, wash.wa.gov or visit the project website. We really welcome comments. As I mentioned, we've received over 1,000 comments so far, and they're really helpful to this team and others working on project development. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We have one more project open house tomorrow. So if you want to join us again, or if somebody you think would be interested in this, please encourage them to attend our meeting midday tomorrow, and we'll be sharing this same presentation. But enjoy your evening. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.